Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome Facebook. I am here with Justin. He is the founder of the VRV, Veterans Referring Veterans. It is an amazing organization. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Justin has an incredible story and I cannot wait for him to share it with you guys. Justin, you're probably the most resilient person that I know. Your story is incredible. I'm so grateful that you're here to share your story with the viewers, and I know that there's just so much that we can learn from you, from your experiences, and really how to deal with, trauma, troubling times, because you dealt with so much all at one time. Um, so I want to kind of just like get into it so that we can hear from you. You know, my viewers hear from you all the time. So, can you talk about how you got started? Because this story really begins with you joining the military. And can you kind of talk about like how you joined, why you joined, and all of that kind of stuff? Start from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And seriously, thank you for having me on. You're part of the VRV and you've already done so much for so many people. So thank you for being on with us, Angel. You mean a lot. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So yeah, taking it back. I joined the Air Force, graduated. I'm from Colorado, born in Denver, raised in Colorado Springs. Joined the Air Force it was April 20th of 1999. I left, and that was the day of the Columbine shootings. So we were like literally driving by as the helicopters and everything was going all over, and we didn't know exactly what was going on at that time. So it was kind of crazy. But anyways, took off. Um, I wanted to join the military because immediately after high school, I tried doing the college thing, and I just wasn't mentally ready. I guess I was still in Mr. Party mode. I wasn't always the best at school to begin with, so I always struggled with school a lot. So I decided to join the military because I saw myself not really going anywhere, and I needed to do something. I was like, why not go out and go see the world? Um, so yeah, did that and became an F-16 crew chief. So I was a general mechanic on F-16. So did everything from changing tires to changing engines. I was the ones out front marshaling the aircraft, Elemental Park, blah blah blah. Super fun. Something I never dreamed in a million times that I'd be working on F-16s, and here I am, 19 years old, and my first base was over in Aviano, Italy. So every day was a blessing. I was like waking up and living in Italy. I was like, I cannot believe they're paying me to live here. It was incredible. So had some really, really good times in the military, deployed a lot, saw a lot of things, been all over the world. I don't know how many times. Kind of with that, I so originally I was at Aviano, deployed a lot out of there, then went to Korea, spent a year there, went from Korea to Hill Air Force Base. At Hill Air Force Base, I kind of brought, everything. I brought my same mentality I had over in Korea, which wasn't that good. It was a lot of like heavy drinking, a lot of just your typical single guy stuff. And so I ended up getting my leasing agent at the time. She ended up getting pregnant within like the first month of me being there. And something with me when raised in my family is, they're very religious, and sex before marriage, all that, especially having a kid, was a huge no-no, and especially the whole divorce word is something you do not do. But anyways, we had our first kid, and she tried to make the best of it. I deployed to Iraq. That was going all the way back. So that was in 2003. I got to Hill Air Force Base in Utah, and then she got pregnant, and I deployed to Iraq, and that was in 2004. My daughter was born February 16th of 2004, and then I deployed 2 or 3 months after that. During my deployment on my birthday, November 1st of 2004, during the Fallujah campaign, lost my fingers in Iraq on my birthday. And actually, it's kind of funny because I actually have a piece of the airframe that did cut off my fingers. So what ended up happening was basically we were dropping this down onto sandbags, and it fell and cut off my fingers. So this was like 2 a.m, and so I lost these 2 tips of my fingers. Should have lost my whole arm. Could have. But yeah, so lost that, and then had.
Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry. Okay, so sorry, Justin. I just wanted to stop you and just say, can you tell us about the process of leaving Iraq? You've lost your fingers, and it's early on in the war, and it's really important that we understand the whole process of like how you end up getting out of there, and the length it takes for you to get help for your fingers. Now I can't hear you.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, my apologies. I was kind of like skimming over the top over everything, so my apologies. So yeah, getting into Iraq a bit. This was during 2004, during the Fallujah campaign. Serious fighting going on. We're dropping ordinances left and right. With the Air Force, there was always the thing like, oh, you'll never be in danger, you'll never be shot at, and all that. No, they were wrong. We were getting mortared all the time. Actually, Brian Colfage, he's back on the news here really good because he's the one who founded that We Build the Wall thing that's under a lot of scrutiny right now. I don't know completely what's going on, but it was September 11th of 2004, and a 107 millimeter mortar round came down, blew off his bottom legs, his right arm, and this happened, I don't know, 30 yards away from us is right there. But one of my buddies used his bootlaces to help save his life. It was absolutely chaotic that day. And one of the things I kind of want to bring up with that, this guy, Eldon Arnaud, he was one of those guys that he wasn't a dirtbag, but he always tried super hard. He wasn't, I guess you could say, like genetically blessed, like your typical people you see in the military, all fit and hoorah and blah blah blah. He was a super good guy, but screwed up a lot. And all of us airmen, all of us, I guess, lower ranking people always cared for him and tried to help him out and boost him up. But he'd always slip up here and there. But I was always trying, and supervision was always down his throat. But fast forward to September 11th, 2004, the mortars went off. He was the first one running over there to help save Brian's life, and we were still getting pounded. There was so much going on. I remember my one buddy, he was the tent right next door, and he comes out of his tent. He's like shaking, and we're like, dude, what's going on? He literally had ducked down, and the mortar had hit, and he had just taken off his helmet to put his helmet in his locker, and a piece of shrapnel went through like 3 lockers. I think it wasn't stuck right where his head would have been if he hadn't ducked to put his stuff off. I was like, holy crap. But anyways, so Eldon was the one that helped save his life. And later that night, because we just got shredded that whole day. It was that September 11th was the day that really sticks to my mind more than the one that happened in Aviano. And actually, I could jump into that story too. But later that night, our commander was a female. Her name was Colonel Dix, Colonel Teresa Dix. She was absolutely amazing. She didn't know me, of course, before then, but the first sergeant did, and he was out of a guard unit. I forgot out of where, but he was our acting first sergeant over there. So for those that don't know, first sergeants are basically like, think of them like your mom and dad that really take care of you in the military. If you need any help with anything, they're the ones you go to. So he knew I was kind of like the jokester, always playing pranks, always being trying to make people laugh. That was my thing all the time. So I always got to make people laugh. So she came into the tent, and at the time I was a staff sergeant. I was an E5, so I was in charge of everybody in the tent. There was 8 of us within this tent, so I was responsible for all accountability and everything. So she comes in. This is probably like, I don't know, 11, 12 o'clock that night, and that attack happened way earlier on in the evening or in the day. But she came into the tent to check on us, see how everybody's doing. And she's like, why don't you introduce yourselves to us? And or she's like, can you introduce everybody? I was like, yeah, that's Sergeant Buckholz, that's Sergeant Smith. She's like, no, your first names. I want to know everybody's first names. Da, da, da. And I was like, all right. And I'm looking at the first sergeant, and he's looking at me like, don't do it. And I was like, well, that's Brian, that's Tom, that's Dan, that's Eric, I'm Tyrone, and that's blah, blah, blah. And she's like, Tyrone? I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize the lights were on. Just being like joking, right? And she got it right away. She was laughing, and she, had a blast with it. Well, from there on out, she would always call me Tyrone everywhere we went. And so there'd be like big giant roll calls, and she's like, where's Tyrone at? And she'd always knew I'd say something snippy back to her or whatever, because it's not like I didn't care. Like respect of the rank wise thing. It was a different scenario over there where we had fun. We brought in laughter towards an environment that when you're in war, you don't know when it's your day to die. It's a different world. So with that, when I got injured on that day, so I'm already going to get emotional on this one, but on that day, November 1st, I got injured. I got my they couldn't do any surgery because it basically cut down to the very tip of the bones of the first fingers, the first joints there. My ring finger had like a 1/4 inch of bone sticking out of it still, so they had to shave that one down. And then other than that, he's like, we can't, that's about all we can do here. We got to ship you out. Because at that time, and mind you too, this is 2 a.m. We're 30 miles north of Baghdad. There's no lights, no nothing. We don't even know where it was called a CASIF, or like a combat hospital. And it was literally just 2 tents. Somehow we found it. And when sorry, I'm going to jump around a little bit, but when we finally got there and got in, the nurses were like, hey, we need to get all this stuff off you, because it was like the movies. It was pretty horrible. It was just spraying blood like crazy. And like when it first happened, I told my buddies, because I was in charge of that entire shift that night. And, we were hurrying and reconfiguring, dropping bombs, this and that. So it's not like the ops tempo of working on the aircraft wasn't slow. It's like we had to get stuff done because lives are literally at risk. So when I lost my fingers, automatically I went over and I grabbed a huge thing of like, it's called tech wipes, basically like paper towels almost, just jammed them on my fingers. And I was telling the guys what to do because they needed to keep the mission going. We couldn't stop because I got injured. But then I told them, I was like, hey, Bucky, I was like, go grab the keys to the bobtail. And then I told my other buddy, I was like, hey, his name was Kelsing. I was like, go grab my fingers. And so he grabbed I go over to the bobtail. He starts it up. And I remember looking at Eddie Kelsing, and he's got his helmet on and he's got these glasses. And he's handing me my fingers, and he's shaking like so bad. His glasses are like shaking. And I was like, thanks for the birthday present. He hands it to me. And we put him down in the bobtail beside me, and we start driving. And we don't really know where we're going. We were just going the perimeter of the base to try to find the CASIF. And the whole time I was telling jokes to my buddy Brian, because I knew I had to stay awake. I couldn't go into shock because I was going to make things so much worse. So anyways, I was telling jokes the whole time there. We get to the CASIF, and as soon as we get into the tent, there's just little Velcro door things, and they're like, all right, we need to strip you down. And I was like, no, because they were gonna like take scissors and cut off my It's this is a DCU maintainer overalls that were like super nice, that always wanted a pair, and I finally got a pair when I was in Iraq, and they were going to cut them up, and I was like, no, these are mine, I don't want you doing that. So I was literally like undressing myself, bleeding out, and they're like, what is this guy doing? And then get up on the hospital bed, there's a full bird colonel sleeping in between like the little tents. There's like a little hallway type thing, and I remember him sleeping by the bench, and I wake him up and like, hey, we got another one in. And he comes over, and I forgot all. Oh, well, this is what was going on. So we were talking a bit, and I forgot exactly what I was saying, but he told the nurses like, hey, I'm glad you guys got him up on the morphine already. They're like, no, he came in here like this. Like, we don't know what he's doing. So it was kind of funny. But then he goes, well, where's the rest of your fingertips at? And I was like, oh crap. And I look at Bucky, and Bucky's like, oh, they're in the bobtail. So he goes back into the bobtail, and the fingers had fallen out of the tech wipes. Like, one was in between the seat buckles where they're supposed to be, and then the other was on like the floorboard. So he had to pick them up with his bare hands and bring them in, and they were nasty looking. And I was like, oh no. But then the doctor said, all right, we got we can't put these back on, they're too damaged, so we're gonna have to sew you up and send you back home. And I was like, no. I was like, can you just sew me up here, and I need to get some work done. So yeah, so this is the part where, and I'm probably gonna cry now, sorry everybody, I'm a super emotional person, but
we need this to happen. That's okay, Justin.
So, and a lot of people don't understand like this side of the war. When he told me I had to leave, that was the first time I cried. It was sorry. It was super hard for me because I felt like I was letting everybody down. Like I was like, why? Like, one, I kept pressing that colonel. I was like, why can't I stay? Like, just staple them up, sew them together. Let me get back to work. Like, I'll work with one hand. It's not an issue. And he's like, no, because there's so much, disease, infection, all that. You need to get these taken care of. So, I remember looking at my buddy Brian, and it was just so hard to tell him I gotta go. And he's the one too that's always like, yeah, he cried as soon as they told him that, so he backs up my story. But it was super hard because especially this happened just about a little over a month when Colfage got hit. And you just never know when if I could be there, if someone else got shot, if they got blown up, whatever, if I was that missing person that could have helped save their life, And not only with that, but then helping with the morale there, because later, as I was kind of coming to terms with everything, they're doing the X-rays and this and that, and then I was laid up in their hospital, and it was funny because then the colonel comes in, and this was that same day. This was same on my birthday, but this is probably like 8 or 9 in the morning. And she comes in, and I'm just like taped up because all they did was literally take a Dremel, file down that bone, and then just put me over to the thing, wait for a transport out. But the colonel came over, and she was like, they told me somebody got injured. She's like, I asked who, and they said it was Sergeant Clark. And she's like, who's that? And they're like, it's Tyrone. And she like, she's like, it can't be him. So, oh my gosh, I'm waterworks. So, it was me, and so she came down, and they found out it was my birthday, and it was super cool because they went down and raided the DFAC, and brought down a ton of ice cream, which is super cool because here you got. I was spoiled because we were LSA Anaconda, or Balad was technically an army base, but they had these big DFAC facilities where we had food every day. A lot of these Army guys and Marines that were outside of the wire didn't get to eat every day. They're always eating MREs, this and that. So her and the first sergeant and some other higher ups came down and grabbed ice cream, and they brought down ice cream for me for my birthday. It was super cool. And all these guys, what was even cooler though, was these Marines and Army guys were able to eat this ice cream that they haven't eaten in, 6 months to a year. So it was super, super cool to see that.
I just that, Justin. How old were you? It was your birthday. How old were you?
What was I, 24, 25? This happened in 2004. So yeah, I was, 24 years old, 25 years old, right around there.
And if I can, if I can just stop for just a second, one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on this show is, or the channels, is because we're not even into what you have experienced. We have not even gone through yet the trauma, really, as crazy as that sounds. And the reason that I really wanted you to be on here is because people don't understand what potential that they're in. The situation can look absolutely terrible. I just want the viewers to think about what you were doing when you were 24, when you were 25. What were you doing? And as you listen to Justin's story, really think about, how sometimes we just need perspective is all I'm trying to bring here, is a different perspective, another perspective on your situation and what Justin has gone through. And Justin's story turns out to be a very amazing, really incredible story. And the things that he's done with not only in spite of it, but because of it. He's taken everything that has happened to him and turned it into an amazing, incredible life. And so I just really, one of the things that I really want people to think about as they're listening to your story, Justin. And again, just thank you so much for being willing to tell it, for being vulnerable with us, for telling us the things that, a lot of people here on this channel won't have the opportunity to hear somewhere else. And it's super important that people are aware of so many of the issues that you're bringing up, and the perspective that you bring to it. And the title of this broadcast is just resilient. There's nothing else that embodies you any more clearer. So thank you so much again for telling your story. And just as you listen to this, my viewers, as you listen to this, I really just want you to think about how blessed you are, how amazing, the amazing potential that your lives each have, each hold. And, what you focus on is what you get. And that's really what Justin is going to be talking about the rest of this time, and what he has been talking about so far. So thank you again, Justin. I just so appreciate you sharing your story and allowing another perspective to come to my viewers.
Yeah, of course. No, and it's crazy because not only and I think what comes into play with this whole too, because a lot of people have their own perspectives of war and this and that. I first realized, because I never really understood the whole Gulf War until I was in Aviano and we deployed to Kuwait. And then Kuwait was crazy because we're at this base that used to be owned by the Kuwaitis, and then it got taken over by the Iraqis, and we had to stay on wooden planks everywhere we went because they booby trapped the whole place. So there's landmines everywhere. The place we're gonna go. It was crazy seeing, like, it was Kuwaiti, got rocked by the Iraqis, and then we came over and rocked them, booted them out, and then we took it back over and we're giving it back to the Kuwaitis. So just to see all that there. But when we were downtown, we were able to go downtown, and we'd still get, and this is 9 years after the invasion, and we would still get people, Kuwaitis, that would come up and shake our hands and say thank you for everything that we had done. And it was so cool, so incredible to see. There's so many neat museums that really focused on the Kuwaitis and what they went through from the Iraq regime. And that really put it into perspective for me. And that, I think, helped me really understand what was going on with Iraq and that whole that whole gig, I guess I should say. So, when I left, when they told me I had to go, I had brand new baby, brand new marriage. And here we are going into war, and we're going into these briefings about this is no BS. This is real world stuff. And so it was definitely eye opening, especially when we first stepped off that plane, and we're like, "What's that noise?" They're like, "Oh, we're getting attacked." I was like, "What?" So yeah, it became real fast, real quick. And one of the things I always told my airmen when I was retiring out of the military, I was like, do not take your training for granted. I was like, you think you're Air Force, you think you got this this cake life, even though you're F-16s and we fly from other places. No, you could be in the middle of the crap real freaking quick. So yeah, it was different, but it was something, sacrificing, you know, being there with this new family with my daughter, and then going to war for something that was bigger. It's something that's really hard for people to understand. And having that military family over there, we all became so close, and we're still so close to this day. Um, but even one of the things when I left, so part of the things, this was a whole giant mess too. So lost my fingers on my birthday. They ended up shaving down the bone. Had the cake and ice cream thing with the colonel. Then I had to roll out, and then so I went from Balad to Mosul. Mosul, we were like getting off the plane to go over and eat at the DFAC really quick before we left, because they had um, refuel it. So like, you guys can go get some food. And we were walking over, and then a suicide bomber hit that chow hall. So we were like, I guess they're not eating there. So then we rolled out, and then we went over to Germany in Longstuhl, and that's when somehow word. Well, I don't know if it was yet or not. I don't remember exactly when it took place, but then my my wife at the time found out that I was pleading to stay in Iraq, and she couldn't understand. And that was the first time I really had the perspective of people really don't understand what goes on with you mentally over there. It's nothing directly to them. I can get where they're like, why wouldn't they want to come home and be safe at home and da da da. But when you're over there, it's something just super super hard to explain. It's a whole mental change to your family that may not be blood, but your brothers and sisters in arms over there is just like, oh my gosh, you can't leave them behind. So anyways, I went to Longstuhl. I should add this in this story too. So I actually lost, and this is really weird. I actually lost these same two fingers, not all the way, but I actually lost these two tips of my fingers in a snowblower. So they didn't get completely sawed off, but it was my senior year, and I was in high school, and I was snow blowing the thing, and I was trying to clear out the snow at the top, and my foot slipped and my hand went into the top, like the spinning rotor that goes out. The clutch was stuck. I couldn't hear it, and my hand had slipped and gone down into the top, and it had nicked. So like where my fingers were, it like nicked the tip off this one and split that one down to the top of the bone, and it like exploded like a firecracker is what it looked like. So it was really a blessing in disguise, because that doctor, it was one of these freak snowstorms in Colorado, and that's a whole nother thing. But long story short, he told me, he's like, because when they sewed him up, and he's like, you gotta keep these dressings super tight, otherwise they're gonna give you the ball peen hammer look on your fingers. They're gonna look super weird. So I did, and my fingers looked absolutely normal. You could, at the time, you used to be able to, until I lost them. You could see a scar underneath my fingernail, and then the other one had like a little bit of a tip kind of weird thing, but you couldn't notice anything whatsoever.
So
So
you had
that's
lost the same exact fingers on the same exact hand?
yeah, it's crazy. And then
What?
the lieutenant at the hospital, because it was funny, because I was, and I know they were thinking that I was just stupid high on the morphine, just talking out my butt, and I was like, I lost these same two fingers or whatever, and she's kind of like, all right, whatever. And so I got to call home. I got to make two phone calls home, and of course, one was to my mom, and I And this is right after I got done telling that nurse that I had lost my fingers. So she goes, I called on the phone and I told my mom, I was like, hey, I got good news and bad news. And she's like, what's the good news? Or yeah, she's like, what's the good news? I was like, well, I'm coming home. And right away she was like, what happened? What happened? And I was like, I lost my fingers. And you could hear her like screaming. She's like, the same too? I'm like, I was looking at the lieutenant. I was like, I told you it was the same too. Um, so yeah,
Wow.
it was pretty crazy. But then it was a blessing in disguise though, because I had to go from we flew out of Mosul, went to Longstuhl, which is in Germany. I stayed about 5 nights in Longstuhl. They were deciding what to do with me because those were in, you got to remember too, at that time, like people think this is a major injury. This is absolutely nothing compared to what I've seen and what others have gone through. They were like, I was talking to the lieutenant there, and he's like, yeah, we could have surgery here, but it's going to be delayed super long, or we could send you back stateside and get you some stuff done there. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's just, I don't care. I'll fly with these. And he goes, all right, I know somebody that's in New York that's super good. And I was like, well, do you have anybody in Utah by chance? He's like, actually, one of the ladies I went to college with works at U of U. And I was like, sweet. So he's like, I can get you down there. And this is the one thing I wish he would have never told me, but he said, there is a possibility for you to get on like a civilian flight over there, but it's not really worth it because we're going to get you home in the same amount of time anyways. I was like, okay. So it's really weird that he told me that, but that was always in the back of my mind. So then we flew on this C-17 plane that only had 30 hours on it. It was like a brand new cargo plane that was basically outfitted to be like a flying hospital. It was absolutely incredible. I was we were on cargo straps, like seats, and I had a Marine right next to me who was 19 years old. He got shot 3 times just inside his gear up the side of his rib cage. And then I had an Army captain over to my right. I forgot what happened to him. His was extremely minor. And then in front of us, we literally had like 3 to 4 inches worth of room to move our feet. And then they were on litters or like stretchers, stacked 3 tall. So that was where the severely injured were at. And this was 2 big rows of all these people. And there was probably around like 150, 175 of us on this plane, to give you like some perspective. And then on the other side of them, there was 2 Army guys and 1 Marine that were severely injured on ICU units. And if you haven't seen this before, like imagine like all those ICU units you see like in the hospitals with all the crazy equipment. All of these were geared up onto these stretchers. It was incredible to see the Army dude in the front. He kept seizing like nonstop. His family was there. His family had met us over in Germany, and they were riding back with us. They gave an emotional speech when this plane ride was over. It was very, very emotional. I don't think there was a dry eye on that plane. Then the Marine, he had swelling in his head from the shrapnel, and they had to remove the whole top half of his head. And they reattached it with like 300 staples they used. It was crazy to see. So anytime somebody tells me that they've had a bad plane ride, I don't want to hear it. Like, I do not want to hear it. You have no idea. So
Yeah, come on. That's another thing, like the perspective, right?
mm-hmm.
It's like, the things that you take for granted, like, oh, there was a bunch of turbulence on my plane, and that was the worst thing that happened. Or like right now they're not serving snacks on the flight, like that's the worst thing that happened. I really truly
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing this. It's so important people recognize that this is not only was this, witnessing all of this stuff that can be very traumatic, but think about all of the bodies that this is happening to. How about that family? They're civilians on the flight, right? They're obviously with their son, because it's such, by the way, they only call your family if they don't know for sure that you're going to make
Yeah.
it from Germany to
Yeah.
the United States. And so, that family is well aware that this could be the last moments that they're spending with their child and 150 other people,
Right.
who are also injured on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I've got Tilton File. He's handcrafted by File. He's on the VRV and he takes the coins and molds them into rings. Absolutely incredible, super talented. So he's actually the Marine liaison for the severely wounded over in Longstool. So that's where he's stationed at. And so every time I talk to him, I always tell him how awesome it is and I appreciate everything that he's doing. But I don't think he really gets it. Like, it's so near and dear to me for what he's seeing, and he's not over there. Like, we're not coming out as we're coming out injured, don't get me wrong, but I guess the amount of volume of troops that are in and out of there isn't nearly what it was when I was going through. But the people over there, and that's another thing too, leaving there, I only had the garments that were on me. I had a bloody uniform. I literally, they threw me a backpack with some of my stuff. It was basically like my ID card and I think like some socks. It was just random stuff that was put into like a small little backpack thing, and that ended up getting lost and I had nothing. It was just I had an ID holder.
So you're literally still wearing the same outfit that you were wearing
Yeah.
when you were injured 5 days later? You've been
Yeah, it was gross.
Wow.
But then so when we got to Longstool, well, so we were like getting bussed back and forth. I don't know how much of this story I want to get into too, but I fell under like the Army's command with everything, and it was so funny because I mean, I'll talk crap on them. I don't care. Like, not the Army, but these guys that they had there. So we were in these like barracks, these old World War II barracks, and mind you, we're just getting out of war. We got this whole thing, and so many of us are, I mean, guys missing legs. The one dude got shot in his jaw, so his mouth, his whole head's like wrapped up like you see in like Hollywood. It was his birthday too. Well, that next day. But we get to this thing and we get to our little like cots that we had, these like bunk beds that we were on, and they're like, all right, roll calls at 4:30. 4:30. We're like, roll call. I'm like, what? So it was like 11 or 12 o'clock we get in, and then all of a sudden they start waking us up, lights on, all that, have us come out in formation at 4:30 in the morning to catch this bus to go over to Longstool, and the dude's barking at us like we're like at boot camp or something. I'm like, who the hell are you, dude? And these guys are all like pushing their buttons on the uniform. They're not your typical type you'd send down range, you know what I mean? And I remember getting on the bus because, of course, you know, Air Force, I'm always saying sir to higher ranking people. And of course, I was like, I said something like getting on the bus, like, thank you, sir, something like that. He's like, I work for a living. And I'm like, are you serious right now? You're going to do this? And I'm like, he's yelling at these dudes that are missing their legs, that are on their crutches and all that. And I'm just like, we're just shutting up, just doing our thing so we can get over to the hospital. But they ended up giving us, how much was it? I think it was like 75 or $100 gift cards that we could buy stuff at the BX over at Ramstein. Ramstein is this Air Force base, is freaking phenomenal. Like, it was so cool being there. It's so nice, and especially after what we've been through. And then sorry, let me flash back a little bit more. Before we were fully engaged at Longstool, when we had come in before. Sorry, I'm getting my stories a little bit mixed up, but this is one of the things that happened. So when we had first got in, before we had gone to those other barracks, they put us in, it was the high school gym, and we're all in these litters, and we're all supposed to stay in this gym until they could get us transported over. So they had this nurse that was watching us, and they were like, you're not going anywhere, blah, 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 blah. You got MREs. This is what we're doing. So we had become very close with a bunch of guys that were there, and we were talking. We're like, we need to go get some food. Maybe they'll let us over to the shopette or something. So we went over and sweet talked the nurse a little bit, and she basically said, I'm going to be at this side of the gym at this time, so if you guys, I won't have any eyes on there, kind of like wink wink kind of thing. So we're like, all right, cool. So we got out of the gym. It was like around, I don't know, 10 or 11 o'clock. It was kind of late. But we went, because she was like, there's a Chili's that's over there. I'm like, a Chili's? Really? so we're all super excited. And mind you, this is like wintertime because this is like mid-November. Now we're over there, and these guys are walking around crutches and missing legs, and it's icy, and we're still trying to adapt to our new bodies, I guess you could say. And we walked into this Chili's, and it was packed because it was a Friday night, and it was like a record scratched, and everybody, like, as soon as we walked in, it's like, and everybody stopped and looked at us. And I got this big thing on my hand. My buddy's got his face all wrapped up, missing legs, and everybody's all, the hell is this? They're like, they're just like, all right, we won't look.
Were you still in the same clothes? At this point, you're still in the same clothes?
That point, yeah, I was at that point because that was before we got the thing. So yeah, we were nothing good to look at whatsoever. Still not. So we ended up. So we ended up getting food, and that was kind of fun. So, anyways, back to my whole flight back. So I ended up rolling out a long stool, and they're like, so we're going to get you home back to Utah, and then you can go of U, and you can get your surgery done. So fly in from long stool to the States. That family gave an absolutely incredible big thank you speech thing to us. It was absolutely amazing. And we start hopping around the States, and I thought that we were just going to go kind of like state by state. We flew into Washington, and then we flew over to Scott in Illinois, and we're literally dropping out the back, refueling, closing it up, and then going, like dropping off people. And then I found out I was flying into Colorado Springs. So I told my parents, we were able to call, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be flying into the Springs. So I can maybe see you guys if we stay a night here. Sometimes we'd stay a night or two. Other times we would just literally be there for an hour, drop the back, and then roll out. So I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to see you guys or not. But just a heads up, we are coming to Colorado Springs. And at that time too, I was like, because man, it had been probably about 2 weeks from my initial amputation. So we went, at that time, I was like, look, can I just be dropped off in the Springs? I'll get my family, they can drive me back to the state or drive me to Utah. I can get a rental car. I can go. It's not an issue. I was like, I'm sick of being on this plane ride and not being back in Utah. Because this is like our third or fourth stop already in the States. And they're like, no, can't do that. You got to go with us. Don't worry. We'll have you home super quick. So it was kind of funny because then we land here in Colorado Springs at Peterson Air Force Base. And then, can you see me still?
Yes, I see you.
Okay, cool. Sorry, it froze on my end. So we land in Colorado Springs, and then I was like, the day before, I told my mom, I was like, hey, we're gonna be in the Springs, but I don't know if I'll be able to see you. She's like, it's all right. My parents are not military. I have no military affiliation besides me. And then when we land, all of a sudden, the nurses walking on the plane because they're like, all right, we're just refueling, dropping people off, and then we're going. And I was like, crap, so I'm not gonna be able to see him. But then the nurse on the plane, when we land and we're refueling, she comes walking through with a cell phone. She's like, I need a Justin Clark. I was like, that's me. And she puts me on the phone, and it's my mom. And I was like, Mom, I was like, that's cool. She's like, hey, we can see you. I was like, oh, that's cool. But I was like, I can't come outside the base. We're going again. And she goes, no, we're literally in front of the plane right now. And I was like, what? And come to find out, she had called like the front gate, and told him what was going on. And it went all the way up to the commander of the base. He came out, they drove out in some Hummers, picked up my parents outside the front gate, and drove them onto the flight line. So I got to see him for a little bit, like 10 minutes. It was super, super cool.
That's amazing. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun to see. So
good for you.
Fly over Utah, and I'm like, all right, that's how I'm supposed to be. Land at Travis in California. And at this time, my fingers, oh, mind you, too, like every single day, I'm having to reopen and change the wounds on my fingers. And this is where my fingers, having lost them previously, came into play because I knew how to bandage them and I knew what to do to keep them from not getting totally uglier than they already are. So, but every night I'm having to rechange the dressing on my own hand. And I tell you what, the pain I was experiencing, probably like it was probably like my 3 or 4 day mark, was 10 times worse than when I first lost my fingers. And they said the pain like would have been less if I would have lost my hand or my whole arm because of all the nerve endings that are in the tips of your fingers. So it was the I chose the right fingers to get amputated pain wise on it.
Oh,
Um,
were you on
yeah.
medications? Did they give you medication to help you?
So it was, and it was funny. We were literally just talking about this the other day. When it first happened, they were, I didn't have a say so and stuff. They were just pumping me full of morphine. And then it was 2 hours after the initial amputation that I was denying meds. I didn't want anything. I hated the way it made me feel, like mentally, like I just felt sick. So I would have to sign a piece of paper, and I still got my flight logs where they'd say, something, tried to administer blah 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 blah, patient is denying medications at this time, and I just have to initial it with my left hand. So I just would rather have the pain than to have that, the way those pills put me mentally. I could not stand them. So I was getting into Travis, and by this time my pinky is starting to turn like black and blue because my other fingers were just it looked fake. They looked so freaky. They looked fake. But I found out because all the nerve endings and everything that's connected, I had the possibility of losing my pinky, I guess, with it. So when I got to Travis, I said, look, I need to get home. This is ridiculous. You guys told me I was going to be home like last week. And I'm still not. We just flew over Utah and we're here for the second day. And I was like, they're like, well, there's nothing we can really do, blah, blah, blah. And they had mentioned the civilian flights. I kind of brought that up. They're like, that's up to your chain of command. So I called my commander directly, and his secretary is giving me so much crap. She's like, you can't do that, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, this is what's going on. So I need to talk to him. So I talked to him. There's a whole nother story in with that. But anyways, long story short, he's like, all right, we're getting you approval. You can fly on civilian flight. I had to get the commander of the medical squadron's approval to fly on a civilian flight. I had to get a waiver from that commander over in Travis. There was a lot of coordination going on. But then I did get a civilian flight out of San Francisco, but it was under the circumstances that I could not fly on a civilian flight with like showing that I was military, showing that I was injured whatsoever, because they didn't want, I was a war amputee and they didn't want the civilians to see that. So I had to buy a jacket with that when I had used that card over in Ramstein, I had bought myself a bigger jacket, thank goodness, because it was wintertime, we were all freezing. But I had this big giant overcoat, so it worked out perfect. So I just hid my hand in that jacket there, and I flew home. And so I did have a change of clothes by that time. So I wasn't super stinky. And then what happened? So then, yeah, I get into Utah. It was like 9 o'clock at night. The commander, first sergeant, met me, and my wife at the time, and my daughter. And it sucked because my daughter totally turned her head when I went to go hug her. She's just like, I was totally stranger to her because she was 9 months old now at the time. So that destroyed me. And then that next day, we went down to the hospital and was checking in at the hospital. They had no idea what was going on. They had no idea that I had just returned from war. They thought that I had some injury like a week ago that I was trying to hide. And I'm like, how did you guys have no idea that I was inbound whatsoever? So it turned into a huge dog and pony show with me, and I was just really disappointed.
Yeah, Justin, before we get into that, do you want to share any of your at home life at this time? Do you want to share any of like the dynamic between you and your wife?
There wasn't, so I didn't get into, well, getting into that, I think is kind of like the next step here, because I
Okay.
didn't really know what was going on
Okay.
until actually, yeah, really this next part. So So when I got back, they said, all right, we're going to schedule with that doctor down at U of U. Here's a buttload of pills. Is those oxycodone, the 10 milligram ones. They were like the super high dose ones. And they gave me a big giant bottle with 60 of them in there. So when I got when I was like actually like home, I noticed like she's my ex now, so my ex-wife, soon to be ex-wife, she was sleeping a lot, and I was changing my baby's diaper, and I'm like total stranger to her, right? She doesn't know who I am, and so she's like freaking out all the time, and I'm usually right-handed, but since I can't use my right hand, these are still open wounds. I'm using my left hand to change her diaper, and while my ex would be like sleeping on the bed, and I knew something was like up. I was like, what is going on? And it was the second night I was there. I ended up having a nightmare, and I hit my hand on the headboard, and it hurt so bad. So I went downstairs to grab one of my pills to take one. Like, it had to be an extreme for me to take one of these pills. I hadn't taken any. But I went down to go grab one, and I noticed they were all gone. So all 60 pills are freaking gone. I was like, are you kidding me? Within a matter of 2 days. Well, it was really like a just over a day. And so I realized there was a problem. So stepping into all that, my ex was into, I don't know how far I'm going to get into this, but she was basically stealing my pills. And then she was stealing some from our neighbor across the street had MS, was getting pills off of her. And then she got into, and that's what kind of led to our breakup, was because there was a lot of abuse that was going on. It was more between me and her. I didn't really know what was going on with the kids. It didn't really start up with the kids at that time. But
is your second daughter already born by this point?
No, so we were in talks of separating. We're kind of back and forth, and then we had a second kid. Of course, trying to work things out, and then we had another daughter, and then we were actually like separated, like actually living apart when my second daughter was, I'd say, around like 3 months old. So that's when we had separated, going through the divorce. We weren't going to bring the kids to the divorce whatsoever. And at the time, I was in the state of Utah, and even at the court hearings, this was so eye-opening for me. They hammered me in the courtroom. I was a male, I was in the military, I'm automatically a piece of crap father. And I was put in that whole category, had no say so. My lawyer tried standing up, because even both of us had agreed doing 50-50 custody. And they overruled that, and it gave her everything. And I was like, oh my gosh. So here I am living on base. Thank goodness that was the only thing that saved me. But I'm not making that much money whatsoever. But then I'm having to pay her $765 a month. And she wouldn't take the kids. So then I'd have the kids full time. It's not like I'm going to be like, no, I'm paying you. You have to have the kids. It was no, that's what I'm here for, is for my kids. But yet I'm paying her like she's supposed to have. That's where this money's supposed to be going, is to be taking care of the kids. I'm still paying her this money, and she's going out and going down to Vegas, and then this other small town, Mesquite, to going freaking gamble. And I'm stuck at scraps. And I used to work out like all the time. I used to be in super good shape, and I couldn't afford eating good anymore. So I was literally eating like those, at the time, they were 92-cent banquet meals from Walmart. And there were those little microwave meals, and that's the only thing I could afford to feed myself with, while still trying to give my kids semi-healthy food. So I took a turn like bad, like physically, my physical shape. I just kind of let myself down, but mentally I was still there. I had to be there for the kids with everything that was going on.
And
there was.
Did you already have, by this point, did you already have surgery done on your hand so that it was?
Oh yeah.
Your fingers were healed? Yeah,
I had to have 2 surgeries. Sorry, it was like a week after. It was a week after I got back is when I got my first surgery done, and then they closed it up, so it was good. So
How far after was that first surgery from when the injury actually happened?
so November 1st is when they happened, and then the surgery date back here, I think the photo of it, I think it was November 26th, November 25th or 26th, something like that is when my first
Almost a
surgery
full
happened.
month.
Yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
it sucked.
Yeah.
So yeah. Are you? Can you see my screen still? Mine looks like it's frozen.
Yeah, I see your screen.
Oh, okay. So it's just my
Yeah.
phone being weird. Okay, good. Um, I just want to make sure I wasn't picking my nose. Well, I can pick my nose, but I'm really not. So so where was it going? So yeah, we started going through this whole divorce thing with the kids. There was a lot of child abuse. I'm not, gonna call her name out or anything like that, but there was a lot of child abuse that was happening with my daughters. There was 6 accounts of child abuse, child neglect with DCFS, Child Protective Services, down there against her. If I were to have half of those, even one of those, I wouldn't be allowed in the same state as my kids, and it was ridiculous because the state kept pushing the kids to be with her. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Um, my kids, like now, my oldest still has nightmares. She suffered the most of the abuse, but it was so hard for me because I ended up getting full custody of them, and at the time she would have them like every other weekend. But then I would notice so many things, like with my youngest daughter, I would have her fully up in potty training. Here I am, a freaking single dad, and I'd have her potty trained. But every time I'd get her back on the weekend, it'd take me 2 to 3 days to get her back to where she's not potty trained. She's always coming back in diapers. Her face is always scratched up because she had skin eczema. Beautiful, beautiful little daughter, but she had skin eczema, and she needed this lotion on her face. And my ex wanted to give that to her and just tear her up. It was so heartbreaking. Um, I mean, like literally blood dripping from her face is so sad. And then my oldest daughter, I always hated once around like 5, 6 o'clock hit, because then the shadows started coming, and she would literally walk around the kitchen or whatever if there's shadows, and walk around the shadows because she was so afraid of the dark. Because what we found out when we figured out what was happening is she would literally get like locked up in the basement of these drug dealers' houses, because my ex got into cocaine and meth, and she would lock him in the drug dealers' houses. On that Friday, she'd pick them up and lock them up, and then Sunday, when it's my time to get them, she'd grab them and then bring them back. And I was like, why? And finding out later, I'm like, why did you do that? Why wouldn't you let them just stay with me? Like, it is crazy. Um, so there was a lot that went on with that, and you know, you got to act a certain way, or be professional, I guess, when you're in uniform. And there were so many times where I was up at the DCFS office, and I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, I remember going up there to file a complaint because I forgot what exactly had happened. But the lady's like, oh, you look like you're upset with us. I'm extremely upset. And she's kind of like, oh, well, get in line. I was like, are you serious right now? I was like, my kids could be dead right now, and you guys are doing absolutely nothing. I was like, or it was basically like, do my kids have to be dead before you guys are able to do anything? Um, I was so furious. There was so much crap that had happened, but finally, when I did get like custody in Utah, and it still wasn't full custody, it was like 51% was me. So she still had a bit, but I had that little bit of a stronghold. But even the judge there is like, you've laid some amazing stepping stones for single fathers in this state. Being a single father down there, and it's a lot has changed now, but at the time, with 2 daughters, like even going to the mall, going to the bathroom, anywhere, and there wasn't changing tables in the male restrooms. And so I remember one time my daughter had a bad accident, and I literally went to the corner of this like Macy's or JC Penney's, and I was changing her diaper, and an employee comes over, is like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, just changing her diaper really quick, because I was like, be just quick and I'll throw it in the trash. And they're like all furious with me. And I was like, where's the changing table for the men's. There's nothing. You guys, and I'm not changing my daughter's diaper on the freaking male bathroom floor. So it was little things like that people don't realize. That single fathers had to go through a lot. There's a lot that's geared towards the mothers, in which I get there's a lot more single moms out there, but there are good dads out there too. I remember talking to my lawyer, and he's like, look, you're going through so much, you're going to have to, there's a single parent clinic that's literally just like 2 blocks away. He's like, you should go down there, check in, see what they can help you out with. I was like, all right, cool. Once again, I was in uniform, so I went down there, and I opened that door, and there's like a record scratch again, and there's like, and everybody looked at me, and I was like, hey, how's everybody doing? And I looked up on the calendar, and it's like women's this, women's blah 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 blah, mom's this, mom's that, mother's da da da. I was like, hey, do you guys have anything geared towards fathers, and like any support groups, anything like that? And she laughed, and she goes, I don't think you're gonna find anything like that in this state. And that was it. And I was like, are you serious? So I was like, I guess I'm just doing this thing. And so I just shut up and did it. And it's funny because I see so many. It just drives me up a wall. I see so many, like, especially social media posts about with single moms or this and that, and oh, I'm doing this and that, da 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 da. And it's like, just I'm not saying just shut, like, be proud of what you're doing, but you don't need to let the whole freaking world know. I know, to me, it's just different for me. I just shut up and colored basically with my kids. I wasn't worried about taking pictures on social media with like, oh, single dad life. No, I was doing my thing and making my girls as structured as possible as I could make it at that time. So it was about 4 years until I met my wife now, that I was doing the single dad thing, 3-4 years.
And during this time, your ex, you had to go back and forth. You moved to California because you were transferred there, and so you had to go through the court thing, file with the courts that you moved and start another proceeding there. Every time that you moved, you had to start a new thing with that new state's court system.
Yeah. So we had so like in 2009, I had met my wife now. But the whole time I was active duty, when I was deploying out, because I was still deploying, still doing this and that. Oh, that was another thing too. I had gone to the, like, say, quote, deployment. It was just Saudi Arabia and Jordan, I think it was. And then I had come back. That's when my daughter had her like first tooth come in, and I think one of them started walking. So I'd missed that stuff. But because everybody's like, oh, you're a single dad, you get to see all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, yes and no, because still being, full time working with the military, deploying, then doing our exercises, it was rough. Because then I was working the midnight shift so that my kids could get watched. So I was working working midnight till like 8 in the morning. No, excuse me. I was doing swing shift from 4 o'clock till like 2 in the morning. At that time was easiest, and then I have to go pick up my kids, bring them to bed, and anyways, where was I going with that? So I'm sorry, I totally lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay. Well, first of all, we were talking about you having to do stuff in every state that you moved.
Oh yeah. But you're right.
Before we get into that, I just want to say, if you guys have questions, I'm sorry I forgot to say this at the beginning. If you guys have questions that you want Justin to talk about at the end, type them in the comments, and we will address them at the end of the broadcast before Justin signs off. So if you have questions for him, please send them in. But yeah, we were talking about how you had to continue to go through every single the court system in every state because you had to file what was going on with the paperwork and everything in that state when you moved there.
Yeah, and I knew if I screwed up whatsoever, like court-wise, or did anything wrong, I would get hammered. So I ended up meeting my wife now in 2009, and then we got orders to Edwards Air Force Base in California. So I had to go file with the courts and say, and by this time, I mean, she hadn't even seen the kids in like a year, like my ex. I think it was like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then,
I'm sorry.
No,
during this time, his ex-wife was not only doing drugs, but she was diagnosed with mental health problems. I don't know if you want to like go into specifics, Justin. So I'll just say there was actual diagnoses for this, that she wasn't in treatment, and it was really difficult for her to even have a home. You know, she wasn't living in a building. So you know, all of that was happening during this time as well. Like all of that stuff was being uncovered. She was having her own life. There was other children coming from her. So there was a lot of other stuff that's occurring in addition to you having to work full time with the military, with the army, or the Air Force, who, you know, has certain shifts. You have to just work those shifts, and then you're a single dad dealing and trying to navigate the society kind of constraints as well. So it's like you're constrained from the military, constrained from the courts, constrained what's available to you in society,
Yeah.
and in the meantime, your ex-wife, you know, the divorce process took a long time because she couldn't get served, and there was just all of these hangups with getting the divorce done.
Yeah. Yeah. She was living out of her car. She had another baby on my insurance. I mean, that's a whole nother story in itself. But me and the father of that child get along extremely well. And so we've helped each other out a lot. But yeah, that child, she was smoking meth when she had that kid. And we tried to get a Macodian test done on it because my lawyer said I was legally responsible for that child since we were still legally married, even though I had nothing to do with that child. And but since I could be legally responsible, he suggested getting the Macodian test done. Therefore, they could take the baby from her basically, and then give it to the guy Randall. Um, I wasn't going to say any names. That was a made up name. Um, so and he went through a lot too with this. It was so sad because here they have this kid. They had a fight. And of course, everything got blamed on him. I don't know exact details of what happened, but basically she had taken off. That's when she became like living out of her car, living at different the meth dudes. And the thing was too, is it was the guy that she was smoking meth. He was the one that came clean to us. He had the guilty conscience and said, "This is what's going on." We recorded the whole thing. That whole thing was a super shady setup, but we had him recorded and we turned it into DCFS. They did nothing, absolutely nothing. And then
That's
I was,
horrible.
it was disgusting. And then with the hospital, I was going to do the Macodian test. I was like, all right, we're going to get her here. We got the Macodian test, and I scheduled it. I had all the paperwork, and I said, all right, this is what we're going to do. And then found out she walked out of the hospital with the baby just straight clear, no name on the birth certificate, no father listed, just rolled out. And I'm like, what happened? Where was the Macodian test? This and that. And then they're all like super fussy with me. I'm like, well, what's going on? Because you literally just let her walk out the hospital with this kid. And they're like, this is under investigation. We can't talk to you anymore. I'm like, so you guys didn't do anything, you know? So they didn't. I didn't even bother following up because there's nothing we could do now. So it wasn't until later she had gotten busted for trying to buy meth and coke from two undercover agents, that the baby was put into, well, taken away from her for about a week. And then until she got out of jail, the baby went right back to her. But the whole time, the other gentleman, the father, was trying to get DNA test done to see if he was the actual father. And when the court hearings came up of trying to find out who the father's child was or this and that, he was there. The judge drilled him, like absolutely embarrassed him, basically calling him a piece of crap father, this and that. And he's like, why have you, he was thinking like he was just hiding out, just skipping away from this kid. He's like, no, I've given you guys 2 DNA samples in Ogden. I've been trying to figure out if this kid is mine and be a part of its life. And what can you do when she's bailing on you when she's homeless, you know? So anyways, the courts hammered him. Not only was he not able to see that kid unless he went through all these giant hoops, the reintegration process, all that, then he had to pay back child support. I think it was like three to $4,000 that he ended up having to pay the state. I was like, are you kidding me? He's like, where's my time with my kid? I don't get any of that back, you know? So yeah, there's a lot that needs to be changed as far as seeing fathers in good light. But when we got orders to California, I had to go through the courts because if I did anything wrong, I know I get hammered. So they're like, all right, you can go to California with the kids, but you have to do a reintegration with her. So we got a therapist down there. She saw him for about 45 minutes. And that was the last time my kids saw her. And that was like probably about 2 months after we got to California. And then she was gone again. Kids haven't had any contact with her since. That was like 2010. 2011. And everything's just for show with her all the time because that was at the time she was pregnant again with this new guy with triplets. So yeah, it was just all for show, and that was the thing with my kids. It was never about the money. It was never about showing off. It was about their well-being. But then, yeah, we went from California, a good time in California, came back here to Colorado. So went through the courts again. And actually, we got jurisdiction here in Colorado. And when I found out we were having a female judge, I was like, oh no, here we go again. This female judge here hammered her. She saw right through her BS. And I bawled like a little baby in the court because it had just been so much. But she just hammered her. Just laid out everything and labeled her as a whatchamacallit, a bad parent. I forgot the legal terms for it. And she's got to jump through all these hoops and do all this stuff to be able to see the kids again. And we haven't heard from her. She didn't even come up to the court. She said she had something come up in Utah, so she didn't even make the court date. I was like, are you kidding me? So anyways, my kids are doing now, though. They doing good. They're still have to go through therapy. In Utah, they had to go through, this is like their fourth therapist they've been through. But the one therapist in Utah was like super, super good. And not only was she good for them, but she was good for me too. Because at the time, coming back from Iraq, it was so high tempo. And then all of a sudden it was bam, all of a sudden into that stuff that I just mentioned. And then I never really thought about me, and so the therapist picked up on that I needed some stuff done, and so I was like, yeah, well, I'll talk to you and do that stuff. And that kind of brings me into this other thing with Saudi, with that deployment I'll get to. So she helped me out a lot because there was a lot that we saw downrange, and obviously with this stuff, and I guess all the guilt I was carrying still. So she helped me a lot, helped me like own it, I guess, in the best terms. And so it was good. It was not like I was struggling super bad, but it was definitely there, and she helped soften it a lot. She did this mind thing, and I told you before, is like take all the bad images and like put them into like, and this is all in my mind, put them all into like a photo book and then close it. And she did that, and it was like bam. I was like, that is freaking amazing. So that helped me out so much. Then when I got back from Saudi/Jordan, and so every time you go on deployment, you have these post-deployment survey things you got to fill out with how you're doing and blah, blah, blah. Well, it was about a month after I got back, I got a call from the hospital, and they said, hey, Sergeant Clark, we need you to come in. And I was like, what's going on? They're like, well, we saw you just got back from deployment, and you got injured in combat. I was like, this wasn't a combat deployment. I'm like, we're aiding, but I was like, well, this wasn't I wasn't in combat on this one. They're like, well, we show that you have a combat related injury. I said, no. I was like, that was back in 2004. And this at the time was like 2008, 2009. I think it was like, actually, I think it was like beginning of 2009. But anyways, I said, wait a minute. I was like, are you just now seeing my paperwork from Iraq? And they're like, yeah. Or like, oh, I guess so. You must have slipped through the cracks. And Angel, you have no, I hate that term so much, and I've heard it so many times with me about slipping through the cracks. So anyways, I had to go into this stupid program with the Air Force where they're like, you need to come see our therapist. You need the PTSD. Because at the time, that was when a lot of the suicides were ramping up and this and that. So I get it. They were trying to be proactive, but mine was way, way, way before that. I was good. I don't care what they said. I was good. But I had to go to their therapists. And Angel, their therapists were garbage, absolute garbage. And I'm not speaking for all the therapists that are out there, like within the military. I know there's some good ones out there. Just from my experience, like I had the civilian one, and he was in these BDUs, like trying to like relate or something. But he automatically was like, all right, what's your name? And tell me about the worst incident you've ever seen. And he's just, and I'm like, dude, I don't know you. This is stuff you just don't up and talk to people about. You got to be comfortable with people. Like, there's still stuff, like my wife still asks me stuff because I just, I don't know, I got to be in the right kind of mindset, I guess. I just can't just start tell all. So, anyways, so uncomfortable. And I ended up walking out. I was like, no, I'm done. Da da da. And then they called me back and they said, no, you got to go back and do this. So I went back again, went to this other therapist that was doing this like yoga style stuff where it's all super quiet and he had this waterfall going and trying to get my thoughts going. And I'm like, no, I'm like, quit trying to bring this stuff back up. It was horrible. So none of those worked. And I was good with that other therapist anyway. So I basically just ignored that stuff and did my own thing. Um, so with all that, with the whole resiliency thing in California, um, they knew of my story when I got to California, and so they were starting. The Army was ramping up this resiliency program, and so the Air Force was adopting it. So I was one of the first 50 airmen to go to this resiliency program in New Jersey. And so we went to this New Jersey, this thing at this Army base, and it was good. Like I get their whole thing was good, but there's a lot of parts that I didn't like. Kind of bringing back like emotions. They were talking about they use this metaphor of like bad bad thoughts coming at you and crashing at you of waves. Like they use like the ocean, and sitting in this class, and they're like having you like get deep like in your thoughts, and it triggered something at me again. And I'm just like, okay, so you guys just brought forth all these emotions. And mind you too, like I think there was only two other airmen that were there that had been like down in like combat. All the rest were your, I guess, typical Air Force type people. I can say that, I haven't really been downrange as much. um but it's brought up a lot of stuff for not only me, but for one of the other seniors that was over there. And and I'm like, okay, so you guys just brought all this stuff up, and what they're doing is they're trying to train us to be instructors to brand new airmen coming in on how to be resilient. But I'm like, okay, so you just brought all this stuff up. Now what am I supposed to do with it? Now that you stirred up that dust, like, what am I supposed to do with this now? What am I supposed to do with these other people? How do we help them cope when I'm asking them to bring these thoughts forward? And I honestly don't know what they're totally doing with that whole thing, but it was a mess with that. It was garbage. And I talked to him offline about that stuff. I'm not one to get angry whatsoever. I mean, you know me, but I was very upfront with like, you guys can't be doing this deep mental stuff with people that aren't trained, that aren't psychologists and all that, So anyways, it was kind of good though, because I was glad they put me through the resiliency program because of everything that I've gone through, because nobody knew really my story unless I kind of shared it. I didn't wear that stuff like out on my sleeves. I just did my thing. So when people started hearing my story, they could relate. So becoming the resiliency instructor down there and taking that with me was good, because there's programs, and like there's so many things that you get taught to by people that may have just studied it, and that's it, haven't experienced it. So I think it's a totally different ball game when you can totally relate to somebody, whether it be from combat to child abuse to even getting in a car crash, something like that, anything. I'd much rather talk to somebody that's actually been through it rather than just studied it. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I love you so much with everything that you've gone through.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Justin. And like that's another thing that I know we're not there yet, but like with the VRV and everything that you're doing, it's like it isn't just like here's a good idea. Like here's something, it's not just a good idea. It's a good idea, but it's like the sticking part of it, the thing that like makes it the way that it is because of you. Like we were talking about this the last time, like other people can try to copy it, but like you're the magic, you're the thing that makes that thing work. And the reason that it works is because of all of your experiences, not because not you wouldn't be the same person if you didn't have all of those experiences. And even though those are like, we're talking about like years and years and years of like a really rough road, like, you know, everything that you went through overseas, deployed, coming home, starting all of that nonsense in the courts, and having to deal with kind of all of these new things, and the trauma emotionally, mentally, never getting the help that you should have had. Like, not only did the Air Force not help you immediately with your physical injuries, but not to mention your mental and emotional state. They didn't ever address that appropriately. And not only that, it's like reopening the wound of, you know, putting
Yeah.
you through, like, oh no, you have to go do this. You have to go see these people 5 years later, when you've
Yeah.
already taken care of that. You've already closed that chapter. You're trying to move forward. And it's like the past is trying to like suck you back
Right.
into that space. So in spite of all of that, it's like you really do embody everything about being resilient. And the reason that you're able to like do what you do, in my opinion, is because of these experiences. You know, as horrible as they've been, like I really think that they've like brought out the best of your personality and the best of like the fixes, if you will, to issues that society has. And that's, I think, something that everybody who's in a really tough situation is missing. You know, like you know, there's a gift in there if you're willing to like look for it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I love about the VRV is like I get so many people that are like, you know, I'm 70% disabled. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like, blah, 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 blah. Well, what can you do? You know, like I got so many people that are busted up. Like I hate my license plate on my car. So it's disabled veterans. I want to put enabled veterans on that, you know. I hate the label, and so many people get on that label of disabled veterans. It just drives me crazy. So no, there is a lot, and you know, everything happens for a reason, you know. And like so many people are like, oh, I'd be so pissed, I'd be telling them this and I'd be telling them that, like as far as like the Air Force goes and the way I was treated and this and that, because there's a lot of other stuff that had happened too. But I'm like, why? It already happened. Like, why am I going to keep digging into that? Like I need to move on. Like they need to be like, okay, this is what happened. This is what, maybe you guys should pay attention if somebody's getting injured in Iraq and amputation and they're coming back to base. Maybe have a little bit better communication. But like there's no sense. Like my thing is like there's no, what's happened has happened. You know, what can I do? What is my best outcome from this? What can I learn from, or now how can I teach other people? So that's really kind of what I do. And this whole, you know, you mentioned you kind of gone into the VRV a bit, but yeah, when I ended up getting medically retired from the military in September, what, 25th of 2015? Yeah, 2015. I came down with I had Crohn's disease. Like when I got to California, my health just took a spin for the worse. And I don't know if it was because, you know, I got married, so like my wife was helping me out a super ton, so my body's like, hey, you can chill out a little bit, and guess what? I got issues. So um, I I I came down with Crohn's disease. I got COPD, and those were related to the stupid burn pits in Iraq. Because if you don't know about those burn pits in Iraq, I'm sure that's where my fingers went. We burnt absolutely everything over there, and we had no face guards at the time. We were literally dumping jet fuel just straight into this big giant pit. Like imagine it like the size of a football field, almost, just burning everything from, you know, like my fingers to munitions, not really munitions, but like metal, everything, batteries, everything was just burning in this big giant pit. Yeah,
Everything got put in there,
yeah,
literally everything.
yeah. You can look up Balad burn pits on Google. You'll see it. It was a beast. Um, so at that time, we didn't have any respirators or anything. And there was this dude. I know he was Army, but he was driving this little Bobcat down in the bottom, you know, like trying to manage the fire a little bit. And I couldn't tell if he was white or black. That's how much. That's how full of crap he was. It was horrible. And he was wearing an handkerchief, but that was it. But I remember this sitting there, and I'm like, we're dumping JP8, which is the jet fuel for the F-16s. We're dumping it into this burn pit. I'm like, really, I came out here to Iraq and this is the way I'm going to die, is dumping fuel into this thing. My God. But it takes a lot, extreme heat for that to ignite. So, but that was something I never thought I'd be doing. Um, but yeah, so yeah, anyways, so getting back here, I when I found out I was getting medically separated because a lot of issues came down. Apparently, I
And
had
did you want to leave the Air
no,
Force?
because I wanted to get that 20-year mark and retire. I didn't want. It was almost like the whole thing too, like not nearly as bad, but like maybe just a little bit tab, like the whole guilt thing. Like I loved my job. I loved the people I was working with, just the whole experience in general. But my health just started literally going down to the toilet. It sucked. So, but once they started digging into my issues, apparently I had like a small brain hemorrhage. I'm guessing that was from Iraq too. There was like like a two cysts that's in my brain, but then they were tested me for lung cancer because I got two cysts that are in my left lung, and that sucked because because I was hacking up stuff like in California that was super, super gross, like black. And I'm like, what is going on? So they started looking into everything. And that's when the doctor is basically like, basically have like 80-year-old man lungs. Like they're horrible. And I remember laying on this table and I had to take this stuff, this fluid that was going through me. They're like, this is going to make you super sick, blah, blah, blah. And I took it. I was like, oh my gosh, I felt so nauseous. And they laid me down on the table. I was like, why did I have to take that stuff? They're like, it's for the lung cancer. I was like, what? I'm like, what do you mean lung cancer? They're like, kind of like the doctor didn't tell you. But it wasn't. They were just checking to see if I had lung cancer. So
Oh
thank
my
goodness I
gosh.
don't. But
Was this at a military hospital?
no, this was off base, and I'm like, I was so worried because
Oh,
the base
wow.
at Edwards is extremely limited. Then I talked to my wife after, and I was like, "Hey, babe, they were just testing me for lung cancer. I was still freaking out like bad." So I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So no, had issues, and then they ended up I basically couldn't deploy anymore with the stuff I had, and so then since I was over 15 years in the military, they ended up medically retiring me. So I've got full military retirement benefits. I got the blue card, got that. The only thing I don't have is the pay because I didn't hit 20 years, but I'm 100% with the VA, so I'm taken care of with that. But then I came back here, and so I'm permanent, 100% permanent in total, but I'm employable, so I can still work even though I have these things. Like right now, I'm having a good day. Some days I'll have super bad days. Um, but um, anyways, I got back and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? I was like, the only thing I know is working on F-16s for the past, 15, 16 years. I can't work on planes anymore because my hands suck. So I was going to go back to school, become like, do a I always wanted to become an architect, like at a high school and stuff. I always wanted to become an architect, so that's what I was going back to school for, is become an architect. Well, actually, I got a job at a local like outdoor shop down here, to keep me going a little bit because I had been off work for about I think it was right around like a month, but I was like, I gotta work, I gotta do something. Plus, I was driving my wife crazy, so you always got to move forward a bit. Because I had, sorry, stepping back a little bit, I had rediscovered fishing while I was in California. And that has been the best therapy I've ever had in my entire life, was fishing. It was so amazing, like just being out of the water, being with the calm, um, catching fish was just absolutely incredible. So I was doing that, like,
I like your shirt today.
yeah, Semper Fly Rods.
Yeah.
Tony, yes. Tony is a Marine with Semper Fly Rods. I'm with the VRV. But yeah, the but yeah, so I got into the fishing thing. I got into this outdoor. I was like, what's something I could do that's whatever. I was like, well, there was this outdoor place down here. I was like, hey, I could go get a discount with my fishing stuff and blah blah blah. This will be super cool, right up my alley. Um, got down there. I had I was like the lead of the front half of the store, but I was only making $11 an hour, and yet I'm in charge of all the money, accountable for all the money, and closing up the safe at the end of every night. And I'm like, getting paid $11 an hour. If somebody comes in here with a gun or not, and they want the money, I'm gonna grab a cart and help them load it up, you know. But because when I got out of the military, I was telling my kids, I was like, I'm gonna be home for the holidays now. We're gonna have weekends. We're gonna have a normal life. And then I get this job at retail. I never worked retail before, and oh my gosh, it was a mess. So, anyways, I decided to. I found out I could use my GI benefits from the military to go back to school, get paid to go back to school. I was making $400 more a month by attending 4 classes a semester. So I was like, it's stupid for me not to go back to school. So I was like, cool, I'll become an architect. But then I'm like, by the time I get my degree, I'm going to be like 44, 45 years old. Who's going to hire me? I'm going to be at the low man at the totem pole. Um, and then, so I'm getting through this kind of quick here. But then at that time I was going to school, I was meeting some other veterans. And that'll come to play here a little bit. But my dad was doing real estate, really successful. I was kind of trailing along, shadowing him a bit, and I loved it because he was helping out people. We were seeing all sorts of different houses, from big $1 million ones to crack houses. And it was super fun, just helping out people. And so I ended up getting into that. I was like, this is cool. So I ended up getting my real estate license, and a couple of the guys I had met at the school we're doing, like, one guy was starting up like a cleaning company daily with Moonlight Cleaning. He was really one of the reasons why I got the VRV going. But I found myself in real estate. My first year was extremely successful, knock on wood. Because a lot of people struggle like their first year in real estate, but I got into that and absolutely loved it. I treated my high-end clients the same as my low-end clients. The way you and me are talking right now, I don't change my tone. I do not care how much money you make. I want to help you out. You know, it was kind of the whole resiliency thing with helping people out kind of really came into like the real estate world, as weird as it sounds. But it was nice to help people out. I think that was just kind of my passion with stuff a bit. But with the real estate, every referral I was sending to my clients, whether it's good or bad, is coming back to me. You know, whoever I'm putting out, it's coming back to me. So I found myself only using veteran-owned businesses for my clients because they were showing up on time, putting their heart and soul into everything, and they're treating my clients like actual people, not a paycheck. So I absolutely love that. And that's what really started the VRV going, was kind of that mentality where it was us, because I would go to different networking events through real estate, and they were kind of the same thing over and over again. But the kind of trend I saw was I wouldn't be seeing these veteran businesses at these networking events, and it's because they were working, they were busting their butts, these small businesses. So I was like, let's create something just for us only, and you know, just really start helping each other out. If somebody's got some sale coming on, if somebody's got a new product or whatever, we can help each other out and start growing. And this idea came, my wife was pushing me to start like a networking group through my real estate stuff. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I was like, I don't know. I don't like believe it or not, I don't like put myself out there whatsoever. I was like, there's so many other networking groups out there. What's going to be my poll? And then all of a sudden the VRV came to mind one day, literally within a week, came up with this. All right, we'll start a Facebook group called Veterans Referring Veterans. It'll just be for veteran business owners, and that's it. And we'll just help each other out, be super strong. And literally within a week, what started as being a focal point for my real estate, I dropped that. I didn't drop that. I still do real estate, but I cut the ties with that and wanted to be just about veteran businesses. And the guy who designed all my logos, Mike with Halo Designs, I told him, I said, look, we've got this group going on. I need a logo for it, but I need a graphic designer that's a veteran. He was the one that designed my real estate cards. And if you,
oh my gosh, do you have a card to show?
I wish I had one, because my logo is hilarious. Because my logo's yeah, it's called Raising the Bar in Real Estate. And so can you see my fingers? So that's my Raising the Bar. So people that don't know, I have like 4 bars going up on my real estate. It says Raising the Bar in Real Estate. So I'm like, oh, that's cheesy. Until you get to know me, then you know it's my fingers. So yeah. So that's my only tie for military with my real estate, because a lot of the real estate here in Colorado Springs, everybody's, oh, we're military, we're this and that, we're pro-military, blah blah blah. And you kind of look at them a bit, and you're like, you're not military. They're just trying to get those clients, which I get, but I don't say any of that stuff on my real estate. So
So
yeah,
the guy who did the logo was the same guy who did the VRV. The guy who did your Raising the Bar logo was the same one who did the
yep.
VRV logo. And what did it
Yep.
out?
So he was the one that was like, dude, why are you locking this down just to veterans? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, why don't you open this up? Because he's like, I think you could have a lot of support from the local community. It's like, dude, that's a good idea, man. So what turned into having a lockdown Facebook group to having an open Facebook group, then we got into the mind of, let's start a website. So I looked online. From what I saw, I was like, I didn't see anything to what we were doing until like 2 weeks after. Then there's this other website on there, but I'm glad we're doing what we're doing, so I won't get into that. But yeah, so it turned into the VRV, which is, think of it like Angie's List, but for veteran-owned businesses and nonprofits. It's free for consumers to use. It's your place to go find everybody from, I got laser engravers to lawyers to guys that make coasters, um, guys that make mead. Like, I got so many products that are right here too, and of course everything that's on me is all made by vets, sewn by vets, designed by vets. So I wanted to do that, where what turned into like our community has really blossomed into a family. um, we started this September of 2018, and so we're going to be 2 years old here next month. um, and it's crazy because it's literally global. I've got people from Hawaii all the way to Germany. And we do socials, networking events at different veteran-owned businesses. This isn't just a place for us veteran business owners to help each other out and give us tips and tricks and do all that and just help support each other, but show off to the community that we're owning whatever, whether we have a disability or not, we're owning our products, our mental well-being with moving forward. um it's incredible to see, like, I got so many guys that have more Purple Hearts than I can count, and they're absolutely owning it. They're taking those next step forward to progressing themselves, working towards goals, um just being part of the community and something more, like something that they used to have back in the military. Because honestly, when I got out, I didn't want anything to do with the military. I didn't want to see veterans, anybody in uniform whatsoever. I was done with it. I was like, that half of my life is gone. And then it was probably about 6 months, and I was like, I was totally missing something, and that's what it was the military camaraderie. So yeah, so this thing has just become a giant family. I got about, I think, just over 300 businesses on, and I could call any one of them on the cell phone and talk the way you and me are talking right now. Um, we have, we, with, in light of the COVID thing that's going on, we are not doing our physical socials at these different businesses, but we do these every Thursday. We do the happy hours, and I look forward to it every week because it's so fun seeing everybody's faces and seeing these new products that people are putting out. Actually, last night was Adrian with Caltex Designs. He makes these bottle coasters and have bottle openers on the bottom of them that are super cool. And that's
Yeah.
actually engraved by one of my guys, Tony. I was stationed with him at Hill Air Force Base, so it was pretty fun.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna
So
have
yeah.
too.
You what?
I'm gonna have Adrian on the show too.
Oh, right on, right on.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's such a good dude. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
me and him talk like every day. He was a Marine. He's out in California now. So it's cool how close everybody's come, and we, a lot of us haven't even met. But yeah, so that's really what started this whole thing. And I get so many, I didn't want my face to be associated with this. I wanted it to be about the logo, what it stood for, and all the businesses. But it was probably like 3-4 months into it, and I was getting so much slack. Is, what's in it for you? Are you even in the military? Or blah 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 blah. I still get it a little bit, but I'm like, no, like, this is obviously someday I'd like to make profit off it, but that's not going to happen for years. Um, but I love seeing everybody support each other. I love seeing all the good things that veterans are doing, the strength within our community to not only help each other out as veterans, but active duty, the civilian world when they need it. Like it's an unstoppable force, and it's just I never imagined it getting like this big and so strong. So it's absolutely incredible, and I mean, it's put me and you in touch. So
Yeah,
yeah, but
absolutely. You know, one
yeah,
of the things that I love about the VRV, as Justin said, I'm also a member of the VRV. Veterans are like such a, I have such a heart for vets. I love veterans. So one of the things that I like about the VRV is that we're able to do, I feel like veterans as individuals are able to do things better than big organizations, no matter how well they are organized or what their intentions are, even the best intentions, you know? So like, would you mind like sharing a little bit about like that story that you were telling me about the USO and the hiring event that the stadium wanted to have, and you know how veterans really aren't getting served in that manner that they should be. But you know, you on the other hand have all of these veteran owned companies that you would have been able to put them in touch with, you know, much
yeah,
quicker.
yeah. So and I don't mean to talk crap on the ESO a bit, but they did do a lot for me when I was coming back. But I got reached out to by some bigger names, and they were like, "Hey, we're having this hiring event for veterans at the Pepsi Center here in Denver, and that's where the Denver Nuggets play and the Avalanche and this and that." So it was basically the owner of all those teams and more. His company was putting this on. So I was like, they reached out and I said, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be a part of that. Let me know what you need from me. They're like, oh, we've already reached out to the USO. They're going to be putting stuff out for us and this and that. And I was like, so I put out like one post and that was it. I was thinking, because they've got a lot of, I guess, money and advertising power. Um, I was thinking they got it. They're going to own it. So I only put up one thing and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go up there because they said, asking me if I want to be a part of it, like go up there and check it out. And I said, absolutely, because the more resources I have for hiring vets, the less they're contacting me because they've got a job. So, which is really boils down, the whole veteran suicide thing too. Um, but I go up there to this Pepsi Center, and there's 60 different companies there, everywhere from the FBI to construction companies. Amazon was there. There was such a wide variety. Like almost the whole second floor is taken up in the dome there. And I get there, and there's like nobody there. There's hardly anybody there. I'm like, what is going on? Super disappointed. And I was taking flyers from people and they're talking to me, and I was just like, look, I'm just here to try to give you some exposure to my vets that are blah blah blah. And I talked to the lady after. They only had 25 veterans go through that day, 25 of this big giant hiring event. I'm like, what is going on with these vets? Like, I put it out and I thought they put it out more, but apparently this other biz company organization was supposed to put it out, and they had promised them 600. They're like, we are going to put it out, but we need a bunch of tickets for the Avalanche hockey game. So they gave them like 600 tickets. They only put it up on their Facebook page one time, and that was it. Just a little blurt. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And so this chick was seriously like so emotional. Like that was like her passion was getting out. She was so excited for all this and nothing. And then she's like, well, you came down here. Do you want tickets? I was like, no, give them to somebody else. I'm not here for freebies. Like, I'm here to freaking help out these vets. I told her, I was like, give me a call. I don't want anything from you guys. I want these vets to see this stuff, And so many of these veterans are so dang thick-headed and they won't ask for help or go out and do stuff. And that's a big problem with us, is like, we won't ask for help until it's too late. And that's one of the things that I love about the VRVs. I think people feel more comfortable when we're involved or somebody with that, because they know it's, I guess, kind of like a safe space. Like, it's weird kind of saying that, but they feel more comfortable reaching out to other brothers and sisters that have been through crap. They know we're not in it here to be like, hey, we got this veteran hired, let's get all these likes and expose them on social media. No, whatever we can do to help you out and you be happy, that's it. if you just send me a text saying, "Hey, thank you for helping me get hired," that's all I need. Like, that's all we want. And I told him that. I was like, next time you do this, let me know. Let me push it on my end. Let's do some, get together, do some videos. I don't have the biggest social media presence in the world, but what I do have is extremely strong. Because people know we're not in it for anything else whatsoever. So yeah, so that was kind of
Yeah.
like disappointing, but it and actually real quick too, I want to add kind of like the strength of the VRV where like we might have like woodworkers, and I've got so many people that are on the VRV that are doing like the same. They may be competitors on the outside world, but within the VRV they help each other out so much. Like Adrian will tell you with Caltex Designs, him and Brandon, like the other woodworkers talk to each other and help each other out and just collaborate. It's amazing. But I've got Greg's down here with Bro Bears Coffee. He owns Bro Bears, which is out in Virginia, I believe. And then down here, I've got Mary with Veteran Coffee Roasters. Um, Bro Bears they have a truck, a big giant coffee truck that even has a grill and stuff on the inside. It's super cool. It's like this bus that's all painted like a flag. Well, they're having to
Wow.
sell it because they couldn't. I don't know if you saw the post. They put it up in the Facebook group because they're just not using it like they'd intended. Well, then I've got Mary with Veteran Coffee Roasters down here in the Springs. She saw the post on the Facebook group and started commenting. She was like, "Hey, do you know these guys? Are they?" I was like, "Yeah, they're part of the VRV. They're super cool." So she reached out right away. They've been talking. Turns out, Greg, I think they just had a death in the family in California. So they were just out in California last week. The wildfires have messed with their plans, so they had to drive back. He actually was just texting me now. He just got into town late last night, and he's going to go to Veteran Coffee Roasters today to go meet Mary and want to meet up with me. Obviously, I got some stuff to do. But I was like, how cool is that? These coffee people are all meeting, and then Mary's going to be driving out to go pick up that truck because she's buying that truck off them and then bringing it back. But I was like, oh, how cool
No
is that?
way.
Making that connection
That's
happen. So
awesome.
yeah, it's super fun to see. So and they're both sellers of coffee, but they're both super supportive of each other. It's super awesome. So I just love the family within the VRV and what we're doing. So it's strong, and I can't wait to
I
see where it goes next year.
Going back to like that safe space, that's what I was saying. Like, you're the magic, right? Like, this story could have ended a lot differently. You've had a lot of stuff going on. Nobody would blame you if you had turned like bitter and angry and like get kept to yourself if you never did anything else with your life again. If that
Yeah.
was just, yep, my life was
No.
ruined because of all of these things, and on this channel, I deal a lot with this narcissistic abuse that you experienced. Your ex-wife had a cluster B disorder, and the whole thing is like this is only the end of your story if you want it to be. You're the only
Yeah.
one who has to decide if that's the case or not. None
Yep.
of that has to actually matter, because you survived all of the stuff with not only the trauma from the military and everything that you went through and not getting help appropriately and moving, and then all of the abuse that you suffered in court, and constantly having to go back with that, and now you're like the connector of all of these people. Like, look at all the lives that you've impacted, and businesses and families that need those businesses for the better,
Hmm.
because you said, this isn't the end of my story. I'm doing something, even though you were medically discharged. You didn't even want to get out of the Air Force. Like, life didn't go, I'm sure, according to like what you thought of when you were 18, like, oh, this is how my life is going to go, right? But it
Yeah.
didn't stop you from creating something amazing that has helped so many people, and even still now serves so many families. It's just absolutely incredible.
No, thank you so much. No, and I mean, it's weird to say, but it's like, I think if I would have taken a turn the other way, even with my kids, I had so many people like, "Oh, you're single now. We can go out and blah blah blah." Because it literally, when I was married at that time, I felt like I was in a cage. I didn't like a mental cage. I didn't realize it until after she was gone, but I was literally on like a mental lockdown. And then all of a sudden, I was free, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're free now. We go do your typical post-marriage crap, you know? And I'm like, no. I was like, I got kids. I literally, because I had nothing left in the house, I literally bought myself a couch and a PlayStation 3 and stayed at home and played video games because I knew that would keep me like not from doing anything stupid. So that's what I did. But I could have easily taken that easy route and been like, pour me this and pour me that and blah blah blah. I'm just, that's not me. Like, um, I had to always move forward. Like I love John Tigan, the TIG Benghazi survivors down here in the Springs. He's always putting always forward. And I love that motto, always forward. You always got to be moving forward mentally, physically. And you're here for a purpose. You know what I mean? Whether you realize it or not. And I see so many veterans with that are deep in that dark hole emotionally and they can't see the light. And we're there for them, to help dig them back out. And you're here for a purpose. I mean, I cannot say that enough. Like, you were loved by somebody. Somebody will miss you, and we need to find that reason for you to be here. Whether it be just talking to people, just sharing your experiences, because everybody's got a story, and that's what I love telling on like the podcast is everybody's got a story, and I love to hear it. Everybody's been through crap. How did you get through it? What are you doing now? What mistakes have you made? All of us have made mistakes. Like, own it. Everybody can learn from it. So it's not the end of the world if you make a mistake. They happen. So yeah, there's just so many cool stories that I've seen that have just come through the VRV with different people, and I love being able to relate with them with stuff. And I've been in front of some big name people that's so cool to be in touch with them. And it's that they're just like regular people like you or me, and seeing these smaller businesses get in touch with these other big name guys is cool, seeing all that. But really, anybody, and especially with this whole veteran suicide thing, not a single one of us wouldn't drive down the wrong side of the road on the highway to go save somebody that's in need. You know what I mean? I mean, not actual physically doing that, but just like mentally, like when there's stuff going on with the VRV and somebody needs help, like every single one of these people will be like, what can I do? What can I do? Like, I don't care what I'm doing right now. I'll turn everything over and get over and help them out. So it's super cool. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's been quite an adventure. I had no idea it was going to turn out like this, and who knows where it's going in the future. But I mean, my thing is whatever you're going through, there's help out there, and like, don't hesitate to reach out when you notice something's going on, because so many of these veterans reach out to me, and it's like, why didn't you call me like 2 days ago? Like, this one guy in Instagram, I'll tell this quick story. I was in a networking meeting at this restaurant down here, and I got a message on my Instagram, and at the time my Instagram was only like, I don't know, like 4,000 or 5,000 people. And he messaged me just saying, hey, I forgot what exactly it said, but I could tell he needed help. I could tell he was reaching out. I was like, hey, give me like 30 seconds. I'm going to step outside, shoot me your number, I'll give you a call. And right away he was like, oh dude, I had no idea you were going to respond that quick. Yeah, no problem, blah blah blah. I ended up talking to him for like 3 hours. Actually, here, let me tell you this whole story. So let me step back real quick. So Friday, that was a Friday that meeting was going on. The night before that, I was going through Facebook and I saw one of my old buddies I was stationed with at Hill, and his name was Drew, and he had this beard, this like red beard, and I was like, oh my gosh! I was showing my wife the picture on Facebook because he was like a bartender, like he looks like a leprechaun right now. I'm like, what is he doing? And this guy Drew we were really good friends at Hill, deployed together and all that. And his wife was super awesome. They had 3 kids, and I think it was his oldest daughter was born without her foot. So there was a lot of support that was for his family at that time when she was born with all that. Just they went through a lot. So anyways, flashback, it was last year. Was it last year? Maybe it was 2 years ago. No, I think it was 2 years ago. I was looking at his Facebook. My wife's like, you need to call him. You haven't talked to him in a long time. You need to reach out to him. I was like, yeah, I will. I'll give him a buzz next week. So anyways, that happened. Then that one guy reached out to me on Instagram. I talked to him for like 3 hours. He was literally ready to kill himself that night. um, he said, he's like, I don't know why I created an account on Instagram, and he's like, I looked up veterans, you showed up. He's like, I didn't think you'd message me back, but I just messaged you. Me and his story were so similar, where he was a single dad. He went through all this crap in Iraq and then got back, but he had just recently, where we differed was he just recently lost his job. He didn't know how he was gonna keep up with his daughter with all that, and he was going to end it that night. There was a lot going on. But when I shared my story with him, and we related, like we just came together like so good. It was amazing, and literally saved my, like, he messaged me after. He's like, dude, you literally saved my life. Just you responding on Instagram knew that somebody cared about me. So I'm trying not to get emotional over this one too. Um, but I came home and I was a wreck. Like emotionally, I was just a wreck. Because it was, I had found out. Actually, I'm sorry, I got things screwed up a little bit, because that was a week later after I was talking about my buddy Drew. Um, that Thursday, I mentioned the week prior, it was that Thursday I was talking about my buddy Drew. That Sunday, his wife put up a post that Drew had taken his own life. So he had killed himself that day. And then I was thinking, I was like, what if I would have freaking, it was that day I was talking about him, is the day that he killed himself. I'm like, what if I would have called him when my wife said you should have reached out? What if that phone call would have helped him save his life? So then fast forward a week later, and that dude reached out and we were talking, and then it just all came back to me again. I was like, what if I would have just called Drew? What if that's all he needed? It was just an emotional freaking roller coaster for me. Um, and it's good. And I'm not saying I won't. Like, I love talking to vets, and if I can save a life by talking to them, I absolutely, I'll talk to them no matter what they want to do, even if they were able to tie the shoes right today. I don't care. Share it with me. But there's a point where it becomes like, more like your ball game. I'll say, as more of the professional, because it's hard. I'm not trained to deal with that stuff, where it's easier, I think, for people to reach out and talk to me. That's great, and I want to do that, but I can't help you out the way the professionals can that have been through that. And then it's hard for me to, where's that line that's drawn, as far, because that's not, like, where it's there's a lot of emotions that come with that whole thing. And I don't, please don't think that I'm saying I don't want to talk to any veterans in need. I'm just saying that they need to reach out to professional people, because that's what they're there for. They're here to help out. That's not embarrassing. You're not weak for doing that whatsoever. You're so much stronger in my eyes with all that. And like the retired chief, or command sergeant major Donald McAllister down in at Fort Bragg, he'll tell you he went through counseling all the time, and because he went to, God, he's been through hell and back. But people need help. They can't do this fight alone, and that's what, obviously I'm here for. But then there's a point where I'm gonna be like, okay, you need to talk to this nonprofit, you need to talk to these people. And it was actually a blessing in disguise with him too, because like 2 weeks prior, we had a networking event, and a guy had came, and he was with he was starting up a nonprofit with video games. I was like, oh, that's cool, what you're doing, because he's like, a lot of these vets don't come out of their houses, but this is the way for them to socially interact with each other, was through video games. So that one guy that was on Instagram, I said, if you had, what would make you happy right now, besides, obviously being with your son? If it was only you, what would make you happy right now? He's like, honestly, I would just want to play video games. I was like, really? I was like, well, I just so happen to meet these other people that are da 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 da. And long story short, got him in connection with them, and he loves it. He called me like 2 weeks later. He's like, dude, the greatest group of guys, and we have the greatest time. He's like, I have a purpose again, and it's so good, because I think so many veterans get lost in that, and not having a purpose anymore when they get out of the military. They're just lost. So yeah, sorry, I'm gonna get off on a whole big tangent about that whole thing.
No, that's a really, really good point. And you're exactly right. Like, it's all about purpose. If you don't have that, then there's not going to be a strong enough thing to make you want to stay here or make you stay here healthy. You know, lots of veterans, I don't want to say lots, there's a large percentage of veterans that struggle with abuse of substances because of that, because they feel
Yeah.
like I was good for one thing, and now my one thing is gone and I don't know what to do now. And so, no, that's a really good point about purpose and bringing it all together. And, again, like the reason that I wanted you to come on the show was to tell your testimony, talk about how much somebody else has gone through. I want my viewers to hear what you have gone through and know like there's a
Yeah.
bigger perspective, to adapt here. And when you have that bigger perspective, it's easier to figure out sometimes when you see like, whoa, that seems like a much bigger problem than what I'm dealing with. I bet there's a solution to what I'm dealing
Yeah.
with,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's a good point about purpose. That's so necessary. And none of us operate in a vacuum. So if you don't know what your purpose is, if you don't know how to get out of that cycle that you're in, there's help outside of yourself. Like you don't have to, and you're not designed to figure it out all on your own.
Hmm.
That's like the most important thing that I want people to know is like, no matter what the situation is, and especially for veterans, there are people who do care, who do want to help, and who can help you, figure that
Yeah.
out, that you don't have to, this isn't where your story ends unless you think it is. You're the writer of your story.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%.
yeah.
And I think that's one of the things too, that war has taught me is not, I do not take anything for granted. Every time I see a sunrise, sunset, like I just encompass it. Like I'm able to physically be here right now, living, breathing, and look at the beautiful freaking sunsets. Cheesy that sounds, but I just love watching sunsets. And like any chance I get, I'm like, oh, that is so cool. Um, but and it's one because I'm here, and two, I'm not getting shot at or mortared, so I can enjoy it. But it's a lot of things that people take for granted and they don't really see. That's kind of right in front of them, and I get it. It's hard when you get down there mentally to see that stuff, but um, if there's a lot of help out there, and you do have a purpose, and somebody needs you in their lives.
Yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely. And like being present, like you were talking about with the sunrise and the sunset and being grateful, that's so important. Yeah, I used to not really want to get older. Probably everybody's like, oh, I'm getting older now. How many people don't get the opportunity to see their birthday? And when I started losing people that I knew, then it was like, okay, you know what, that not only that person but that family, that entire unit was affected, and they don't celebrate somebody's birthday anymore. I'm going to celebrate every birthday.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And
So
speaking, oh, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
we'll go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say you need to get, if you haven't seen them, I put them out yesterday. The Four Ward project. They're absolutely amazing. They lost their son to suicide 4 years ago last Saturday, but um,
Mm.
they'd be a good one to have on your show too. They're an amazing veteran
Wow.
couple.
I will absolutely look into that. Wow. Yes. Yeah. See, same kind of theme, like these very destructive things that like would and could consume a life, but something can come out of it that's beautiful, that's good, that can help other people. So
Yeah,
we have a question quick, Justin.
yeah.
If you wouldn't mind. So, what are some supportive things that people can say and do when meeting a single father struggling with the culture or system?
Ooh, that
Supportive
is a
things.
good one. Um, I honestly, words of encouragement. Tell them they're doing a good job. That fathers can play the single father role and do a good job at it. Honestly, I think that would have been, I mean, I got that a lot, and that was really helpful towards me. Um, yeah, I honestly, I think words of encouragement would be the biggest thing, and not like over the top, but just let them know they're doing a good job, because there's so many times that you're out there and it's like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm a new parent in general, and then I'm doing this all on my own. So just having that extra support that they're there, just like, hey, you're doing an awesome job raising those kids, or just something towards that matter, I think would be extremely beneficial. That's yeah, that's a really good question. I've never had that before, but I can't think of anything else. I mean, unless you want to buy him Super Bowl tickets, that'd be cool too.
Right. Um, one more. Is a guy named Kevin Hines part of the VRV, or do you know him? It says that he is a suicide prevention advocate. He attempted suicide, I'm gathering, from the Golden Gate Bridge. He jumped off and is a survivor. He focuses a lot on the military suicides.
Yeah, I think I've heard his story. He's not on with the VRV. I think I have heard his story. An absolutely incredible story too, if I remember correctly. But no, he's not on the VRV. Honestly, I think I just watched one of his videos like a couple months ago. So absolutely, I think he's the one that like jumped and realized midway, like, what am I doing?
Wow.
Super freaking cool story. But yeah, no, he's not on with us. I'd obviously love to have him. But yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, well, I think those are all of our questions. Do you have anything else you want to talk about or add before we end?
Oh, you want to go for another 2 more hours? No,
Yeah.
I'm good. No, seriously, Angel, thank you so much for having me on. You're absolutely amazing. And those people that you were helping have reached out and like, she is just an absolute angel. So thank you seriously so much for helping out and being part of the VRV. Love being in touch with you, and thank you so much for having me on the show. And anybody that's listening, if you got anything you need help, let me know, and go buy from veteran businesses on the website.
Exactly. Yeah, I do want to actually say that. So, Justin, your real estate stuff and VRV are both linked in the description of this video, no matter what platform you're watching it on, if it's on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. So check it out. Go follow the VRV. Really support veteran-owned businesses. This is everybody has like phases in their life, but veterans are really starting like another life. It's like it's completely opposite. It's completely different from what they have been doing. This isn't an easy transition for veterans. Not all of them want to transition. Like in your instance, you were kind of made to get a different career and get out of the military and go find something else to do. We really need to support our veterans. We really need to honor them, and it can get easy to get distracted with all of our own stuff. There's people out there who are fighting a harder battle, and so we really need to support them. And your mission there is just amazing. So I love what you do. I love being part of the VRV. I'm so grateful for it. And yeah, I want everybody to know about it. I want everybody to go support it. Go follow them, like them, and buy from the website, all of the veteran-owned businesses.
Right on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming again. I really appreciate you sharing your story. It's amazing. So you guys, thank you again. Go follow Justin, and we will talk with you soon.
Right on. Thank you, Angel.